It's just gonna
That's
go.
okay. That's why I
Okay.
just read them to me anyways, so that we can just do that first. Was
Okay.
it
It
the
takes a
birth?
second to connect
Was it
anyway.
January?
So
That's okay. Was it January or
January 11th, 1980.
19,
Let me
January
hit
11th?
yeah.
Okay, perfect. And birth time?
9:17 p.m.
Perfect. Um, and then was it Pennsylvania as well? I just have to bring up the
Yeah,
email.
New Kensington, Pennsylvania is where I'm from. Well, that's my original birthplace. I'm not there now, but
You get up
yeah.
anyways. Hmm, 1 second. Oh yeah, Kensington. Perfect.
Yeah, it's new. Yeah, it's New Kensington. Yeah, it should be. Yeah. I'm gonna read your bio. So, hey guys, we probably got some people coming into the chat. I'm gonna pull the chat up on my phones in case we have questions. Give us 1 second, guys. We're gonna get started here. Amelie's pulling up some details, and then I'm seeing if this chat popped up. Yeah, there we go. Okay, there we go. So, and if somebody could share this out, that'd be great. And anyway, guys, I'm really excited about my guest today. Today I have with me Amélie Gillerat. She's all the way from Australia. Amélie is a sidereal astrologer. Amélie is a renowned astrologer and iridologist with a passion for guiding individuals on their journeys of self-discovery and healing. With years of experience in both fields, Amélie combines ancient wisdom of astrology with the holistic approach of iridology to offer a unique perspective on personal growth, healing, and well-being. She has studied astrology extensively and has developed a deep understanding of how celestial bodies influence human behavior and life events. As a certified iridologist, Amelie uses the study of the iris to gain insights into physical and emotional states, helping clients achieve balance and vitality. Her approach is grounded in belief in our minds, bodies, and spirits are interconnected. By understanding these connections, we can unlock our full potential. Through her work, Amelie helps individuals navigate challenges, explore their life's purpose, and improve their overall health and wellness. And I'd like to give her a big warm, and I believe her website is her name, Amelie Gillerat. Is that correct?
It's She Reads the Stars.
Oh, she reads the stars. I'm sorry, she reads the
Yeah, that's
stars.com.
okay.
And I'll put that in the description. And yeah, with all that said, I'd like to give her a big warm welcome to the show. Amelie, thanks so much for coming on for the first time. How are you?
Thank you very much for having me. I'm very excited to discuss everything we've got in store for today. So thank you, Rob. Very well, thank you. Just post Christmas. It's been quite amazing summer in Australia. So we just had the summer solstice. So on the opposite side to where you are, you're very cold up in the northern hemisphere, I imagine.
Yeah, yeah, it's real cold, and we just had the winter solstice, so it was
Yeah.
yeah, and but a lot of weird stuff. Like I don't know if you study like like the retrograde of the planets, but I had Laura Eisenhower on recently. Well, for you guys that don't know, I saw Amelie on Tony Sayers' show. I'm friends with Tony Sayers. Tony comes on my show, and he recommended that I have Amelie on. So I saw his interview with her, and I thought it would be a good idea. But what I was saying was, so thanks to Tony if he ever sees this. Thank you, Tony. And so I saw, or I interviewed Laura Eisenhower like last month, and she told me that like four planets were in retrograde, and I've been noticing like that the world's been like really chaotic and crazy. Like if something's supposed to happen, it doesn't seem to happen right. It seems like the energies are off. Like I've been saying this for a while. Like does this reflect with what's going on, or do you feel that too? Or I just kind of want to get your opinion on what you think, like the alignment of the planets, and if that has an effect on what's going on in the world today.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely does. Retrogrades tend to have that energy because that's when, from our perspective on Earth, the planets seem to be moving backwards. So when that happens, it does bring a little bit of chaotic energy, or because it's the planets aren't going direct. So they're not able to be moving forwards and influencing us in a progressive way. We kind of backtrack a little bit. It's a lot to do with internalization, and reassessing situations in our own lives when a retrograde planet is making a conjunction with one of our natal planets, or just on the grand stage, that's when we can see things kind of shifting, but sometimes not literally in a backwards direction, but at least in a way that sometimes we do question what's going on a little bit. Although one of the more major recent, I guess, transits was when Pluto actually moved into Capricorn, but everyone, well, it didn't move into Capricorn. Everyone assumed it moved into Aquarius, according to tropical astrology. But when we utilize astronomy and track what the visible planets are doing in the sky, Pluto has already been in Capricorn for quite a while. And because the hive mind and collective conscious can have a massive influence on its own, if majority of the world is perceiving that Pluto has already entered Aquarius, even though that won't happen until 2040, which is more significant when I assume everyone listening would be quite familiar with ideas of the 2030 agenda, 2040 agenda. It was actually in about 2023, early 2023, when Pluto moved into Capricorn from Sagittarius. That meant bringing quite a bit of power into the hands of the government, hands of hierarchy and structure and systems, because Pluto holds the power and it lasts in one sign, depending on the degrees of the sign, but for really like quite a long time. But a lot of the collective are thinking that we've reached the stage of Pluto and Aquarius where that is actually when the power comes back to the people. But you can look at it as a positive that a lot of people have already kind of stepped into that reality. Although realistically, I think on the hands of the controllers of this realm, they want us to think that to a certain extent. It almost lets people just take off, take their seat on their couch thinking that, it's happened. The astrological clock has ticked and, we're stepping into Aquarian age energies and it's all fine now. And when it's like the calm before the storm, really, like they've put us into a state of calm before the storm, possibly, when realistically, how the energies are working is that they have quite a lot of energy on their side because they are the ones in control, they are the ones in the power, and the Pluto in Capricorn has been allowing that since around the, um, COVID scam period.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. So what do you foresee like for 2025 if you had to guess? Like would this be a year of change, you think, or do you think this will be a year for good for the collective, or will it be more of like a control structure craziness? Like,
So, um, I tend to try and avoid so far from trying to predict certain major stage events. Although if we even just look at, the year numerologically does have certain, effect as well. I don't know the most about numerology, but I do definitely strongly believe in that. So, it's the year of nine, which is like kind of the completion number. It's the it can be things kind of resolving to a certain extent or a little bit to do with collective, and that's a humanitarian number as far as I know. So that is actually quite a good placement. And I have seen this year having been the number of eight. I don't know about most people, but I feel like I've seen a lot on the stage of so much entrepreneurship or development in business and finances, lots of investing, crypto going crazy. Like it has actually played out. So when we look at in 2025 and we look at the numerology of that, um, there is possible great shifts in regards to humanity. However, again, there are so many different ways that this can go. And at the moment, and for the past few years, I feel like it's just been really quiet. It's been like crickets in the truther community since there was, absolute chaotic energy and world changes just a few years ago. And then now it seems like there's not too much going on, not much happening. Even a lot of people with truther channels don't really know what to talk about. But I feel like we are possibly just in the calm before the storm because there's no way that the controllers have given up or stopped or anything like this because from my perspective, we are in a cyclical world, and that the reset that has happened in the past, in my opinion, is coming again. And I feel like they do a lot of the events and the agendas that they plan is because of that they know is coming. But we don't know when that is, but it could possibly be in like that kind of 2040, somewhere around there. Who knows? Although astrologically, that would make a lot of sense because that's rebellion and energy is Pluto in Aquarius. That's very revolutions, rebellion. That's when people stand up. That's because the power has come back to the collective.
So that's a good thing then. That would be,
Yeah, yeah,
wow.
it is. But I think although as humans, we do have a lot of power at the end of the day. The zodiacal matrix and the way that it programs our reality also has a lot of power. So, because a lot of people are still asleep to that truth about this reality and the way that there is kind of coding and programming that goes on, we still have to keep in mind that when Pluto, which is a very alchemical, transformative, and powerful energy, is in Capricorn representing structure, hierarchy, and then government systems and rulership and giving power to people who are already in power, basically. We do have to keep in mind that that is kind of what we're up against at the moment. But I think we're just in a time period that is really, it tells a lot. It feels to me like it's kind of the tipping point in the Kali Yuga age, if you know what I mean, at least the century that we're in currently.
Yeah, that's interesting. So you do go by the zodiac then? Like,
Yes, I do. Yeah.
yeah, that's interesting. Like, what do you think about the zodiac? Do you feel like it's like a matrix tool or something like that? Like, or like but do you think it was placed there to like, yeah, tell us what you think. That's interesting.
Yes, so I am an astrologer, although my astrology readings are not mainstream by any means. Not the most mundane astrologer, let's say, but I do perceive the zodiac and particularly the seven classical planets as the gatekeepers of this realm. So you can really correlate the seven planets with also the seven archons. So supposedly the great architect of this universe can be known as maybe the Old Testament God or the Demiurge in Gnosticism, but supposedly there is some sort of malefic force that did create this realm. And it could have been that maybe it was through a hijacking process or, it's really, I forgot the word for it, but it's really just perception. Everyone's trying to figure out what the origin story is, although a lot of ancient texts do seem to give the idea that there was some sort of malefic intention behind creating the realm, or at least the way that it's set up and what we live in. So, for that, because we're in such a physical reality, we get our energy mostly from the sun, air, and consuming other living products. So, just food, plants, meat as well. That indicates that we're a very carnal nature, and that does also indicate that we are a little bit disconnected from the true eternal source. And because of that, we as spiritual beings do have to live through this physical body where our abilities is very limited. Even the way that we talk, when I'm reading a natal chart, I'm even trying to find the words to describe what I want to say because our language is so limited and our perception of reality is very limited. But then there's also undeniably some entities that are present in this realm on a different level of dimension, although they would also be disconnected from source. So we are their food source, just like a cow is our food source. It's similar, just on different levels. And so, because of that, we have to continually produce negative energy. And when we put that into the world, it's feeding this matrix earth system and it's also feeding these negative entities. And the way to ensure that that happens, because inherently we are positive light beings, like, I mean, that sounds so new agey, but like inherently we are wholesome, like we have good intentions most of the time, rather empathetic, but we are all imprinted based off when we incarnate through the seven spheres of heaven, which are gate kept by each one of the seven classical planets that reads our soul and then imprints us with a zodiac natal chart, snapshot of the positions of the planets in the sky when we were born, and that codes us with specific challenges, limitations, hardships, traumas. Everyone has their own recipe, but at the end of the day, at some point, it's always going to create some sort of turmoil, strife, different challenges that makes us exert negative energy. It makes us struggle to be able to find and live our true purpose peacefully without any sort of being held back or getting into relationships with people all the time that try to bring us down, or it depends on your specific code and program, but it is intentionally there to have us kind of just stuck in this samsara cycle of death and then reincarnating and then getting a new code that again has the same intention.
So I was going to ask you. So I was going to say a lot of times people can feel like they're targeted here because like from the archons themselves. Like
Mm,
like it's sometimes it feels like the matrix is like two steps ahead of you and it knows what you're going to do and
yeah,
it'll like mess up your things just to do it. That I
yeah,
honestly feel that. And then I was
yeah,
going to say so are you a believer in like the soul trap then? That like
yeah.
we're definitely tricked to come back here over and over again
Oh yeah.
and
Yeah.
that it's a loosh feeding thing, right?
Yes, definitely. I do like to hold the perception that we have the free will to leave, obviously not while we're still alive, but when our soul leaves our body through death, I do think that we have the free will, but it's not easy. It's like we are able to, but we're playing a game and there's levels to the game. And I look into ancient scriptures quite a lot, and they very often seem to give the idea that your ability to kind of leave this realm is dependent on the life that you lived and mainly the spiritual path. So they used astrology in ancient times not as kind of a beneficial, uplifting way, but as a truly deep alchemical process to discover what it is, what placements and limitations there are that's keeping you connected to the material world, because it keeps you in a cycle. And yes, the matrix code can utilize, in some cases, for some people, their physical reality, like a car breaking down, a house burning, using or like a job that they can't escape, something like this, it can use your physical reality to even prevent you from your true spiritual path. And each of us do have a specific soul mission, soul purpose, a higher path to be living whilst you're in this lifetime, not just cycling through the matrix system and getting into bad relationships or bad situations, or you know that's more the lower way of living where there's no progression, there's no soul advancement, there's no true self-discovery there. So that's what the matrix wants you to be living, although everyone does have a higher path and a higher potential. So for everyone it's different. It comes through your natal chart where that can be read. Although in ancient astrology, the astrologers would help people through that process, self-discovery, realizing and having awareness over their life code and finding how they can best align their life to live that true purpose and complete that mission, which you do by really working on the planets and the placements and realizing it in your lifetime, trying to alchemize that by turning a negative into positive. And supposedly, when you do walk that higher path, it's technically like you're winning in the game pretty much, because it comes back to you at the end of the day and how you navigate this world. And then when you're able to live with the least amount of uh like restriction, I think is the word, then that supposedly is going to help you be able to transcend those seven spheres, surpass those archons, and then be able to liberate from this world. So you have the free will to do so, but it always comes back to self-knowledge. And that's why the ancients always said, O man, know thyself, for within is hidden the treasures of treasures. What's the biggest treasure in this world? Probably freedom from it. And so it's from self-knowledge that you will be able to unlock that chest and be able to walk, like leave this world a free man or woman. You know what I mean?
I fucking love that, dude. That was amazing. No, I mean that was fascinating, and that it seems what it's really about too. You know, like that's
Yeah.
wow. Wow. Yeah. So, I mean, so what would you say that like when we go through the end, like what do you think the challenges are to leave here? Do you feel like they're going to present us with our loved ones and say, "Oh, come to the light," or something like that, or do you think they'll say, "You messed up. You got into a fight with your girlfriend at this point in time. Don't you want to go back and do it all over again?" Or they say, weren't you like unhappy with the way this job you were doing really good at this job, then it didn't pan out for you? Wouldn't you like to go back and do it over again? And this is a really good point because when we hear things like that, it makes me think that we didn't just do this like we it's not just past lives that we did. Sometimes I
Mm.
think we did this exact life. Like you were Amelie before and I was Rob, and like we were in this exact position before, maybe hundreds of times, maybe thousands of times, and for whatever reason
Interesting.
we keep coming back because we're doing it wrong. Because think about what they say. They bring up points in your life and they ask you supposedly, wouldn't you like to go and do that again? So it's almost like saying, wouldn't you like to repeat this life over again to do it right? Because the reason that
Mm.
leads me to that conclusion is I've had many deja vus, like weird deja
Yeah,
vus,
I was
where
about
I
to
felt
say.
like, that I've done this exact thing before, and I'm like, oh shit, and it hits me so hard. And I get this when I have it, I get this weird feeling in my chest that goes down and travels to my stomach, and it's an uneasiness. So it's never good,
Mhm.
the deja vus. It's always just like very strange and bizarre and like something that doesn't feel right. So
Yeah.
that's kind of what leads me to those conclusions. I don't know if I'm right, and I'll never be able to prove it, but you
Mm.
know, yeah,
No, that makes a lot of sense. I was about to mention if I haven't like yeah, I haven't decided definitely like yourself, we're just trying to figure it out like a puzzle. But it does make a lot of sense because deja vu, it feels like we've lived that exact moment before, and it doesn't make sense if you're getting deja vu from a time that you were like, as a woman, like you're a man and you're feeling like you got the exact same moment or something. So it
yeah,
makes more sense if you were living the same life on repeat. And also, when I do read charts, I can get a good idea of the progression of your soul through this matrix, through the lives. You can especially look at that through the planets that are retrograde, specifically the classical planets. So, someone who's got quite a lot of classical planets in retrograde, that means that this life you're probably going to have to work a bit harder. You're going to have some harder lessons with those planets because you didn't, spiritually alchemize them well enough in a previous life. And actually, it would probably make a lot of sense if it's to do with the exact life that you just lived. Although I would imagine they wouldn't be the exact same because you do have free will to be able to make progress, to be able to alchemize planets and make a difference. So maybe you're living as the same avatar, similar situations, but I wouldn't say that it would be the exact same, but maybe overlays of different
yeah.
moments where you hadn't changed that in this lifetime and you're getting deja vu, for instance.
So I was gonna say before we get into my chart, do you want to tell people like how did you get into this? Like and like so it's because it's not just astrology. Like you said, you read the ancient texts and like you want a deeper understanding of what's exactly going on here. So did something happen that
Yeah.
kind of like sparked your interest in all this, or did you have like a spiritual awakening, or did something bad happen that drove you to this, or you know what I mean? Like
Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess I'll just say I am an astrologer now, but when I was growing up, I didn't think about it at all. That's why when I get some clients and they're like, okay, Emily, I'm skeptical about astrology, but then at the end they hop on board. But I can relate to them because I also never thought twice about it. I just knew, some girls in school that would talk about zodiac signs, and I used to think it was so generic that it was just a trendy thing. Like I never thought much about it. It was only from, I guess, the first part that got me into it was waking up to reality in other areas. Astrology didn't come till a little bit later. At first, because I'm still young, but it was really at the point of like 2020, which we know what happened then, which is really when I woke up. even at that time, I was only just finishing high school. Like I had only just finished high school when that happened. Yeah. Or like maybe even in year 12 or something. So, oh, we can't hear you at all, Rob. Maybe he's on the phone or someone.
I was gonna say, so what? Maybe you're 24 or what?
Oh, okay. I'm 21, but I always am shying away from saying my age because people always think, "Oh my God, you're so young. Like, how can you know all of this
No,
and
it's okay. You
something?"
look really distinguished and you're very knowledgeable, so it's okay. Like and
Oh, thanks.
I think honestly, like I always say this, like I'm 44 years old, and I mean, like I wish we had a lot more younger people to kind of like carry on the torch of like the truther community. I always say it in like the UFO community because I'm in all of them. I interview some
Mm,
day I'll interview someone from the paranormal. The next day it would be UFOs. Next day it'll be something like this. Next
yeah.
be ancient history. So, I wish people would like, go in each one of these communities. I wish we had younger people that would want to like that were interested in this stuff because it's sometimes a lot
Yeah,
of
that's good.
times people's spiritual awakenings don't happen until later in life. Like for example,
Yeah.
like me, when I was your age, I was listening to a lot of like UFO and paranormal radio. I used to listen to this guy. His name was Art Bell. He was like the first guy. It was before podcasts even existed. But
Mm,
then I had a spiritual awakening in like 2015 when I heard about the story of the Anunnaki, and that like blew me away. That like that we could have been genetically manipulated and all this, and like
yeah.
so that was like, and then I started going down every rabbit hole. So mine didn't even come till like I don't know in 2015. I was 35, so like
Mm,
I wish I would have found out a lot sooner. I mean, like I said, I had a
yeah.
thirst for it, but like so I think it's really cool that you're your age and you're into this. That's amazing.
That's good. It might be because I never grew up drinking fluoride. So,
That's the way to go too, And do you use non-fluoride toothpaste too?
yeah, my parents are very switched on people, so definitely helps, but they were never the type to, it's especially my dad. He's very knowledgeable and especially the esoteric, but they're really on top of all of this as well. Um,
Are your
but
parents
yeah,
my
like
age? Or am I just wondering?
are they no, my parents are like from like mid 50 to 60. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. Oh, yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I bet I bet you they're really cool people.
No, yeah, I love my parents and my family. I definitely have, yeah, grown up very privileged, especially just in the knowledge. Like I see my parents as just so intelligent, especially how they navigate this world, and they're very switched on. Let's just say that. So I'm very grateful for them. Like I would say this like I'm a pure blood, if you know what I mean. They're that switched on. So
Are you negative?
yeah,
Are you RH negative?
no, pure blood as in like I've never had like the
Oh yeah, yeah.
intervention.
Don't because I'll take the video down. Yeah, yeah. I mean, we can't.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah,
dude,
yeah, yeah.
seriously, the littlest mention of it, I swear to God, it's crazy. Like the
It's really
censorship
bad, I
war,
know.
I think everybody knows what you're talking about now. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. So yeah,
Mhm.
but no, not a native, but
Mhm.
anyways,
But
I
are
would
you
definitely
RH
put
negative
you.
anywhere? Like I'm O negative. So I think so I'm like almost like RH negative. But I mean, well, I'm negative, so I don't
Okay.
have the rhesus. Well, some people say it's the rhesus monkey gene, which was put into humans when there was a genetic
Mm,
modification. So if you're negative, that means you don't have that. If you're positive, that means you could possibly have that. But that's a conspiracy theory. It could just be they could just be
mm.
blood types. Like
Yeah,
I,
okay.
I don't have any fact to back that whole like it's a whole yeah,
Interesting.
sorry, yeah, I just explained it. Yeah, but anyway,
No,
so
that makes sense. Yeah, but anyways, so my dad never, because obviously we were going through school, so if you like are thinking that differently at school, it's going to make it difficult. So I really, at the end of the day, I had help, but I definitely came to it on my own terms, and I have siblings, so I can compare that I'm much more of a deep researcher in comparison. But yeah, so it was really around then the situations that happened in that 2020 frame that really woke me up. And then from there, I just felt like I just went down every rabbit hole. I was just so fascinated. Honestly, the world on the outside just didn't matter to me. I just wanted to search for the truth and just really discover. But I definitely have a very expansive mind because after I was really researching the material matrix lies, I wanted to get into the esoteric, the occult, symbolism, metaphysics, old world, how like the grand scheme of, okay, so we're in the Orphic egg, we're separate from Pleroma, like just going deep and thinking way outside the box. And eventually, I was I was raised Catholic, so I've gone through all the processes of that, but I started to look at the Bible from a different point of view. And it was from researching that I just started to find a lot of astrotheology in the Bible. And then when I was thinking, okay, this is a really advanced book, and I was looking into some other scriptures, they also seem to denote astrotheology as well. Then I was looking into ancient structures that were really built in alignment, precise alignment with certain fixed stars, the cosmos, solstices, all these things. And I was thinking, okay, so I do know that the ancestors of us were very advanced, very switched on, and they put such an emphasis on the cosmos and stars and everything. So that's what really made it click for me. I was thinking, okay. So then I just was thinking, okay, well, how do I look into this? Maybe astrology. But I searched up my tropical zodiac chart and I didn't know, I didn't had learned it yet. So I went on to Cafe Astrology and just read the what was written there, and it didn't really align with me. I was a bit skeptical. I was like, oh, it was telling me things like I'm more introverted and shy and, I'm not much of a doer, but that was like pretty much the opposite of me. So it wasn't really resonating. But then I came across some sidereal astrology YouTube videos, the idea that we're a different zodiac sign, and that fascinated me. And as soon as I found that and I put it into cafe astrology as well, obviously it's a very generic way of reading your chart. It's not holistic, but that made a lot more sense. It was talking about fire and air element, and I was like, okay, this makes more sense. So then I just wanted to research much deeper into it. I started to realize that I think there's a massive connection between how this realm functions and like the coding of it and astrology. So I just went, head into the deep end. I was studying it one-on-one with like a proper astrologer and just continually learning, studying, reading friends and family's charts. And now at this point, having read hundreds of charts later, I also know a lot of what I know just from experience of reading people's charts and how different everyone's life is. Like, I've read charts for like so many different types of people. Everyone's true purpose and path is different. The way that the matrix and code tries to hold them back from it is unique and different. And yeah, now, like, especially on my end, having had the experience of reading charts so many times, it's undeniably true. Like, I cannot even deny the fact that we absolutely do have some kind of clock, giant clock in the sky that in every way influences the affairs of humans on Earth. Like, it's just undeniable.
Yeah, there's another girl that comes on my show. I think Tony might have mentioned her in your interview. Her name's Olawoni. I
Yeah.
don't know if you ever heard of her, but she feels that like
Yeah.
I met her through Tony as well. But she feels that like that astrology is kind of like a matrix code to like hack the matrix, kind of like or
Mm.
something like that. That it's like a tool for the matrix. Do you feel the same way?
Yeah, very similarly. I see it as definitely I on the Tony Sayers podcast, I had a PowerPoint and I showed what looks like a spider's web. I was comparing the zodiac to a spider's web because when you look at a chart, first of all, the 12 constellations are making a perfect circle around the North Pole Polaris. And then the ways that they aspect each other, it really looks like spider's webs. So if you want to create an analogy of it, you can imagine that our soul is like a fly that gets caught on the web when we incarnate into this realm. And we more or less, most people unconsciously live by their zodiac programming. But when you kind of wake up where you're sort of lucid dreaming in this reality, you kind of become like Neo a little bit in the Matrix movie, then you're able to almost manipulate your chart a little bit. You can never get rid of it because it's physiologically and biologically in us. Our body contains 12 essential mineral tissue salts, and they each correspond with one of the 12 zodiac constellations. So Califos corresponds with Aries. Aries, the constellation, rules the head. We also biologically have what I can't remember what it's called, but we have what looks like a ram horns in our brain. And then the Califos tissue salt has a lot to do with the nerves and the motor neurons. And, if you're lacking it, you can get headaches and tension migraines and all these things. So it's extremely connected, right down to Pisces, the two fish representing our feet and how they're tied together in the sky, just like they're tied together by our legs. Like it goes down to our biology. So also I have to say as well, the seven endocrine glands of our bodies are tethered to the seven chakras and then also the seven classical planets as well. So
Whoa,
basically
wait
there's
a minute. That's interesting. So wait, the
yeah.
the seven endocrine glands, and what do those do?
So they are the mass they manage hormones in our body, which has a lot to do with how we function. Like hormones are a lot to do with emotions, and the sway of that and just how we feel. We've got the adrenal glands being our stress response and the pituitary gland, pineal gland, like all of that. So
Can I
they
make
there's
a, can I make a,
seven.
I just wanted to say, a lot of times people think it's just sexual. Like when you say hormones, like, but I learned something at 44 years old. My friend told me that like men, like testosterone, I guess is supposedly like a huge thing for men. It's not just like
Oh
anything
yeah.
sexual. It's like it can cause depression, fatigue, like,
Mhm.
like muscle loss, like, like it can really, like not having testosterone for men can really mess your body up. So that's why I
Yeah.
thought it was important when you said that those endocrine glands are tied to the seven chakras, which is our energetic or electrical body, right? So that if
Yeah.
something's messed up there, it's going to mess up another part, and it's going to kind of like,
Yes. Exactly. And then that's also tied to the seven planets of the zodiac as well. So it's all connected. So basically, what I was saying is there's no way of just getting rid of your natal chart. It will always be present whilst you're living this life. Although there's ways to retune it. So you can look at it like the song, like your life is one song. And interestingly, we're getting back into synchronicities and numerology. There's 12 musical notes, 12 zodiac constellations, seven musical letters, and seven classical planets. So you basically are a song. And the idea is that you can just retune it and almost just level up in a way. Like you can retune your chart to be able to alchemize it. That's what the great alchemist really did. It was all an internal process of the whole turning metal into gold. Same way you can turn the lower base energies of your chart into higher energies that actually support you and allow you to live a higher life that is because the thing is that it's easy to be a truth seeker and then fall into a pessimistic rut where you think that this world might as well just explode. Like you can get into a really dark negative headspace, and a lot of people that isolate themselves because they don't see any point in partaking in anything that goes on here. But what that does is it really just makes you exert more negative energy. You're not going to be happy doing that. Maybe some people can really, I know people can find happiness in solitude, but that's not what I mean. I mean the people that really can't see a positive thing about this life or this world. But realistically, we are creator beings. So when we tap into that creative side and we really actually shift our mindset into creating a life that we enjoy, that allows us to actually break away from what the zodiac mage, like archons, want us to do by living a life that seems like it's got no purpose, no soul, there's no point. And it's all darkness. We're ruled by demons in this world. Like, instead, just create a life that fulfills you and feels like you're living what you're truly meant to do. So that's the way that I look at it, anyways. And I feel like that's the best way to starve these skeptomorphs or these negative energies, negative
I love,
entities.
I love that. Wow. And then, real quick, I wanted to ask you about was how did you get into iridology, and what does that do exactly?
Oh, yes. So before I got into like working as an astrologer, I was going down the natural health route. So I am still very interested and passionate about it. And I studied, naturopathy. I don't know if you've ever heard of Dr. Thomas Cowan at all. Okay,
Uh-uh.
well, some people probably have because he was speaking out a lot during the 2020 period. But I studied with him looking at germ first terrain theory. Like I've gone down those rabbit holes of natural health. And through doing that, I also studied iridology. So that is basically looking at your more physical genetic blueprint. It's a chart just like I'm looking at an astrology chart, but this is for your health. So I'm very fascinated in that and I love that as well because it can really help people understand their genetic blueprint. It's in an aspect of the diseases that you're more prone to, genetic predispositions, and it can give you, it's more of a preventative way to just see that if disease was to appear in your body, where is it more likely to take place just because you genetically have weaker tissues here, or you can see where there's chemical and toxic deposits in your body just by looking through your eye. Your iris has a map of your whole body, basically.
And does that have to be done in purpose? I mean, in person? Does that have to be done in person?
So it doesn't actually. You on my website, I have videos on how to take a picture of your iris. You kind of need two people and a flashlight, but if you just get a clear picture of your entire iris and you label it left and right, and then when you email that to me, I'm able to just analyze it and we have a one-to-one consultation. It goes for like 75 minutes where we go through. I also have a report written up for you, and you only really need one iridology reading. It's not something that you don't really need to go back and back for that unless it's for a health consultation purpose, for health planning and treatment. But just for reading the iris, it moves very slowly. So it's not going to change too much throughout your lifetime. It's more so just reading your genetic coding.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I might do that myself because I had some
Yeah.
like small health issues earlier this year, and I was like trying to figure out like what the issue. But I'll email you about it. Yeah, that's interesting. So did you want to get into my chart real quick? I think that'd be cool.
Yeah, let's go for it. So I'll just share my screen then.
Now this is sidereal astrology. It's not tropical astrology because right, because tropical astrology is wrong, and then right, or it's not. But this isn't Vedic astrology either, right? Or is it? How?
No, yeah, I'll just briefly mention that. So, tropical astrology, for anyone who isn't aware, it's a system that has basically frozen the sky in time based off when the seasons and the zodiac constellations aligned. So, that was basically when spring in the northern hemisphere aligned with the Aries constellation, which really took place back in 1 BC, and then they've just kind of kept it that way. So, when you look at astrotheology in the Bible, it's also based on tropical astrology, but there's some things going on there because it doesn't even align with the seasons correctly in the southern hemisphere because spring up north is autumn for us down here. So Aries is an autumn for us here in Australia and all the countries down below. So, or not below. Well, anyways, basically, it doesn't account for the precession of the equinox, which is the shifting of the constellations along the path of the sun. Now, it happens very slowly at a rate of 1 degree every 72 years. It's about the lifespan of a human, so we don't really get to see it happen in our lifetime unless we really, team up and all keep track of it, but it does happen. And so the idea is that the constellations have shifted about 28 degrees or so in the last 2024 years, meaning that they're about more or less a constellation off. So one sign off, which is why your sun sign kind of changes as well as the majority of your other placements in your chart when you use true sidereal astrology because it's astronomical astrology. You could just take a telescope, look at the sky at any point in time, and that is going to be the accurate placement of where the sun or Saturn or whatever is actually placed, but it won't be the same as what a tropical astrologer who uses a program on their computer will tell you.
Wow, that's amazing. Oh yeah, thank you for clarifying that. Yeah, that's I think people need to know that. That's interesting.
Awesome. So let's get straight into it. Let me know when you can see my screen.
I can see it now, but I can't. It just says you started transferring. I can't see anything yet.
Oh, you can't?
Now I can. Now I can. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, perfect. So let me just get rid of this thingy. Okay. So the part that means true in sidereal astrology is that all the zodiac constellations are different sizes. That's where it differs from Vedic astrology that uses equal 30 degrees. However, that's not what it looks like in the sky. So if we really want to use astronomical astrology, we're going to use the exact degrees. And what's interesting is that there's three modalities in astrology. There's cardinal, fixed, and mutable. And when we use the exact degrees of the constellations, we can see that the three modalities, the zodiac signs within them are very similar in size. So I'll briefly just say that, cardinal is Libra, Cancer, Aries, and Capricorn, and you can see that they're the smallest constellations, as opposed to mutable being Virgo, Pisces, Sagittarius, and Gemini, which more or less are the bigger constellations opposite, making a cross in the sky. So there are a lot of things that make sense when we do use the exact degrees, but just double check with me, Rob, that your birth details are correct. Is it 9/17?
9:17 p.m. So
Yep,
yeah, yeah, and that's the right town, New Kensington, Pennsylvania, USA.
11th of January.
Yeah, yeah, my
Okay.
birthday's coming up here soon. Yeah,
Yeah, happy birthday, solar return.
yeah.
Um,
What's that mean, solar return?
So that's when the sun goes all the way around and then returns back to this point. So when the sun goes back to Sagittarius at 26 degrees, that will be your solar return. That actually creates a new chart of its own. That means that from that date, the 11th of January until the next 11th of January 2026, you'll have your own chart that's got energies for that solar cycle. That's why birthdays, that's why birthdays have a different feeling to Christmas Day because you're actually having an astrological significant moment on your birthday when the sun returns to that spot.
Wow, that's amazing. I never knew that.
Yeah, it's really
Really
cool.
interesting. Yeah, that's really cool. I'm
Yeah.
thinking a whole year on
Alrighty.
January 11th then. So what would that'll be a whole new chart then?
Yeah, you'll get a new chart, which is basically a solar return chart. So the sun will still be here, but the other placements will all be different, and that just reads your energy. So if it was someone was born in June 20th, then their solar return chart will be from June 20th, 2025 to June 20th, 2026. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's not January to December.
yeah.
Yeah, so it's
But
pretty
are
interesting.
there like general things you can pick out that will probably stay the same, or things that you know about me, or that you can tell me that will probably be the same, or
Oh, you still have the natal chart. You still have that. That's always, this is your whole life fundamental foundational chart. The solar chart is just added on for a year, basically.
oh, okay, okay.
It's more about the events and partly predictions and things on that chart. Whereas this is more, okay, this is your life. This is literally the blueprint that every chart that you can develop from a Venus return, Saturn return, progression chart, or a transit synastry, they're all utilizing this chart, which is your natal chart. So it's the foundational number one important chart, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So when we look straight at this, I know we don't have like 75 minutes, which I usually do, but we'll touch on the really important parts in a chart. So, straight off the bat, like when we look at, for instance, what was rising, we've got Leo, Sun in Sagittarius, and then Moon was in Virgo. So, that's already being quite significant in the area of fiery elements, especially when it's a Leo rising. There's no mistake for the fact that you do have a YouTube channel because you're looking to be seen. And what's interesting is that when we note Leo, for instance, you're taking it from a perspective of wanting to bring knowledge to the masses because Leo is being in the public eye. The ascending is your outer personality and how people in the world do see you. And so it all depends on how you choose to show up to the world. And in a way that you're doing that through your platforms, for instance, is by bringing knowledge and wisdom. And that knowledge and wisdom can definitely come from the Sagittarius energy. This is the great philosopher. This is seeking wisdom, knowledge. Sagittarius is information, but on a higher plane, because philosophy takes a more expansive, open-minded ability. And having Mercury here as well, conjunct your sun, also connects that ability for you to be able to expansively think, maybe possibly have even a bit more of a right-brained way of discovering where you're able to think creatively, discover, seek. You have a adventurous personality, but not in a personality way. I mean more as a the way that you choose to learn and discover is where you really adventure researching, discovering, uncovering, going on. It feels like a quest for you. It feels like an adventure because a sun in Sagittarius is all about freedom. So, also being in the fifth house, it's finding the most pleasure and fun and excitement through treating education and learning and curiosity as one big quest, one big adventure. And that's where there's also a massive focus in this life for you as well, is on that, treating it like a quest. And then how people see you is through this Leo lens. At the beginning, by the way, I just go through more of the personality aspects before we get into more of like the matrix limitations. But the ascending is the constellation that was rising on the eastern horizon when you were born. So that means that this is what you project to the world. And through Leo, it's usually that very lighthearted, kind of energetic, a little bit of like a public persona in a certain sense. And it's especially the energy that you are rising into. So you would continually find more confidence through speaking out to people, exerting yourself. Might have been a little bit tricky in the beginning because you do have Black Moon and Lilith in the first house, which is very much a matrix program that puts in limiting beliefs. So you're too self-critical. You have like a voice in the back of your head that can be just saying things that might doubt your ability or
Yeah, it does do that. Yeah.
yeah, like the critic for you, like because Virgo is so critical, perfectionist, and the first house is the house of the self, then when we look at Black Moon and Lilith being like when you have an angel and a devil on your shoulders, how they say that Black Moon and Lilith is like the devil that's just speaking shameful guilt into you, and it comes through in the area of being a little bit too self-critical, skeptical of your ability, maybe self-judgment. And in the you could have worked through it a lot now, but it would have been a little bit difficult in the get-go or in the beginning, or maybe even public conversations or talking to people where you might have always had this a little bit of a mindset of being overly judgmental of yourself or a little bit too tough on yourself, a bit too self when I say too tough on yourself, probably just hang on, I want to word this correctly. But yeah, I think that's the best way to put it. Like you maybe take yourself seriously. And that can be a little bit difficult when you do have this sun in fifth house where you have this playful, joyful, light-hearted persona where in true nature usually are quite bubbly, optimistic, friendly, easygoing. But then when you have this Saturn and also Black Moon and Lilith here in the first house, it's difficult to navigate how you show up in the world because you do have a tendency to take yourself seriously, set really high standards for yourself, maybe try and reach a point of perfectionism that isn't actually real. And it's just setting the bar too high or thinking that maybe you're not bringing as much value as you would like to, or just being too overly judgmental of yourself. So that can be something that you might struggle with a little bit, especially when your Leo rising is propelling you and pushing you to get on like a public stage of some kind, which could be a public, a YouTube channel or something like this, and actually speak out, be a voice in the public and have eyes on you. So there can be a lot of inner conflict when you're being driven towards having the eyes of the public on you and being the attention, but also having this difficulty and internal turmoil to try and navigate being able to just show up and bring what you can at the table and be happy with how you do want to share and, produce and say what you want to while also struggling with a little bit of inner critic, essentially.
Wow.
Now, when we have Jupiter exactly on the ascendant, um, this is further enhancing the role of the ascendant. So this is indicating that what I do say about having a very outwardly persona, it like enhances that and makes it even more prominent where you feel like a push to kind of show up, and maybe even people in your life have also like maybe encouraged you or tried to propel you towards a point where you did a career that was a little bit public, or you started some sort of channel or something like that where you are seen and acknowledged. But then there is Jupiter retrograde, which can bring a little bit of an internalization and self-reflection a lot on being able to do that. And because Jupiter is more or less in the 12th house, it means that although you do have this outwardly drive and this ability to kind of bring something to the people, and then through that, you're going to have attention on you. I think there's also a bit of a somewhat of a pull to sometimes seclude a bit. Maybe there's a bit of an internal pull in how you do navigate being extremely public, but then also wanting to just kind of hide away at some points, or feeling like maybe there's a pull between I want to reach a large platform and have a large platform or have a big influence, but then I also don't know if I really want to have such a big influence, or maybe there's a little bit of a internal, like having a quick self-discovery moment of trying to figure out the balance between those two and the pressures that you could kind of feel from such a big role of having a Leo on the ascendant, for instance. Now, you just have a lot going on in this area of the chart, especially with Mars here as well. I'll
Can
just
I ask
make
you
an
a
assumption. I
question?
would be,
I,
yeah.
I wanted to say I just have to ask this. I wanted to see if it says what it says about like my relationships because I've had a lot of failed relationships, a lot of failed
Mhm.
relationships. Like I can't seem to get it to work for whatever reason, and I wanted to see if the chart reflected that.
So you definitely do have Venus square Uranus. So I wouldn't be surprised if sometimes the part of the relationship that kind of is not the cause, but leads to having difficulties or failing in that is because I think you would love to have a lot of freedom and independence in a relationship, maybe in the way that you think or the way that you act or what you do. For instance, the fact that you are a communicator of truth, let's call it that. And that could possibly bring a little conflict in the sense of how you're able to navigate the relationship. Like if I can ask, is that because you think that you attract people that maybe don't align with your very unique beliefs or ways of living, for instance?
Sometimes maybe, yeah, yeah, and then other times it's just like I don't know. It starts off good and then it ends up like chaotic for whatever reason. Like even if they're
Yeah.
into the same things as me,
Yeah.
I can't figure.
Well, yeah, well, that does make sense. I mean, when Uranus was in Libra, but this is the usually the sign of relationships. So more or less, I would imagine that you would be attracted to someone that you can intellectually connect with, where you have a lot of knowledge like knowledgeable similarities. For
Yeah.
instance, I think you wouldn't be able to tolerate someone who isn't able to intellectually stimulate you, for example, and not be able to have an advanced conversation. So that would be important naturally. However, a square is a challenging aspect, and because Uranus has very, on the bad side, has very erratic and rebellious energies, that can definitely affect the relationship aspect of bringing kind of unexpected outbursts, like maybe the relationships can go through extreme good times and highs and then extreme bad times and lows, and it just doesn't seem to be predictable. It's very unsteady, unpredictable, can bring sometimes chaotic energy into the relationship as well. And that can come through just because Uranus is very much challenging your the Venus as well.
Yeah. Wow, that's fascinating.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so you can see that in a placement in the chart, definitely. Although through those experiences, you would learn a lot because Pluto is creating a positive trine um, to Venus. So you can look at that as like having intense and passionate relationships, but you can also see as those lessons that come through your relationships improve you. They up level you, you learn a lot from them, and they transform you in a good way to a certain extent. I mean, it might be difficult and tough, but uh, there is a positive side to it. For example, I mean, obviously we want to find a relationship that's like a happy ever after and it's smooth sailing. But through the difficulties and turmoils, at least you have this positive trine with Pluto. And when it's in Virgo, the sign of improvement and being meticulously improving, for instance, that is helping in up leveling you and transforming and improving you through the lessons during the relationship or even afterwards.
Yeah, somebody
So,
made ask a good point in the chat. Somebody said, "Was it?" And I know the answer to this already. Somebody asked, "Was it possible to do charts before computers?" And I think the answer is yes, but I think they would just map it out differently. Like they would. I mean, do you know anything about that or?
yeah, there's a way to calculate it. That's when you can really say that astrology is scientific or uses a lot of maths and science because charting it without a computer would be a slow process, but you'd definitely do it. That's what they supposedly did if they didn't have some kind of advanced crystal technology or something. But
You
yeah,
think
you
they did
can do
though? I
that.
think
You
they had
just
advanced technology for sure.
Yeah. I think they did because they were able to see the sky to just an amazing without supposedly having telescopes or advanced technology or something. They must have had a way to be able to map the sky, to be able to see it, to be able to precisely build ancient structures in alignment, and then also to be able to see how it corresponds with the anatomy inside the human body. There's definitely some kind of either ability or some way, but it was more so in the 18 and 1900s where we can track back and see that people were drawing them by hand.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's interesting.
So, yeah, they looked the same. I think maybe that's why the 30 degrees were easier. Making all the zodiac signs equal 30 degrees probably made it easier back then.
So, like, what is that thing in the center, and why are there those little triangles in it? What does that mean? Does that all mean something?
So those are the aspects. This is the relationships between all the planets and the placements. And this just makes them more organized, being able to see, because obviously it's really hard to track them here, but you can see that the sun is conjunct Mercury. So you just learn all the different symbols. And what they really are is just how all the planets were kind of talking to each other. And these are what really give the detail. So through reading a chart, when I'm just going all through it and making one big story, I'm really taking into account all of these aspects because that's what makes it very unique.
Oh, this is so interesting. This is so interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, it goes really, really in depth for sure. Um, but yeah, so I wasn't going too crazy in depth because it is kind of a long-ish process. when I do. However, that again, talking about this first house, that's a huge theme for you in this lifetime. Maybe just really working on allowing to release the Saturn placement that brings kind of tension or taking yourself too seriously, maybe holding yourself to extremely high standards that if you don't live up to them, you probably end up in just a bit of disappointment, or maybe dealing with possibly certain moments of anxiety or anxious moments. Even Saturn is making a square with Neptune, and this is a very, it's like the spiritual planet, but in a negative square, this means that you the levels that you hold yourself to are just illusory. Like you probably might tend to fantasize or have ideal situations or you know, set those standards again or work yourself to extremes that don't actually, it's unnecessary and it's driven by this illusory aspect to Neptune that again, it can be deceptive. So there's an idea that you can be self-deceptive, and that's how that can kind of play in. So it's remembering that whilst having a critical outlook is good, it's also trying to work on how to release that so it doesn't negatively impact you. So
Wow.
also usually with the moon in the second house and then in Virgo as well, like I wouldn't be surprised if you are someone who is you very much emotionally need security and stability. Now, especially through your living situations, your lifestyle, finances, you very much seek to have a very to be able to provide for yourself very well. Through stability, security, like as in setting up for yourself so that your lifestyle can be predictable in a safe and comfortable way. That's like an emotional need for you. So you would probably drive yourself to be able to achieve that so that you can satisfy your emotions. But in general, having a moon in Virgo, it's not the it's not an overly emotional placement. So it doesn't mean you don't feel, but you probably analyze how you feel or try to intellectually process your emotions. That can make it a little bit difficult to express. And then if we see here, when we're just looking at, say, Mercury making a square with Pluto, this can also bring a little bit of a challenge in being able to express yourself, maybe in a way that when you do tend to speak, you might get feedback that it can be, you might say very blunt or intense things, or your words hold a lot of power, but it's also very hard to navigate. So because you're so knowledgeable and fascinated by advanced wisdom and knowledge, which is very key here, you also do have to remember this square placement can bring challenges in the way that you do communicate and express that knowledge and wisdom because it can come through as maybe quite intense or overpowering, or like overly transformative, that if that makes sense. Maybe there's a bit of a difficulty for you to be able to organize your thoughts into words and really connect that structured way of communication or being able to, yeah, speak in an organized manner that's easy for people to comprehend and it isn't overly intense. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, it does.
Yeah. So then let's have a look at, we'll just dive straight into, we'll finish with the South and North node because in my opinion, these are some of the most important parts of the chart. And you have like your North node directly on Regulus, which Regulus is known as kind of the fame star. But where we're really born is in the South node placement. And this is what is very much a matrix limitation because it feels comfortable and safe, and it's where we tend to really fall back on and try to stay in this area. And so having the South Node in Aquarius in the sixth house, um, how that can tend to play out is, first of all, usually I like to get a bit of an idea of what your current situation is so I know how to word it. But because this is in the house of day-to-day routines, it seems like you're very rebellious amongst society's living situations. Like, I think that you tend to whatever the world seems to be doing, you seem to try and do the opposite in your day-to-day. Maybe
I do that in everything. I do that in
yeah,
everything.
if
The
they're
music I listen
awake, then
to,
you're
like
asleep.
everything. Yeah, yeah. No, I do that in everything. I've always been kind of against the mainstreams. I don't know why.
Yeah.
I just have.
Yeah. Well, you definitely feel comfortable in that regard of rebelling against whatever the system expects you to do. That could be through mundane education. That could be through, you know, modern mainstream health news. It could be just even in working a classic 9 to 5 or something like this. Whatever it is, you you really do try to just completely rebel against that and do your own thing. You're rebellious and independent at the core, and that's something you highly value as well. So you probably work hard to create a system, a way of living in your life that can allow you to separate yourself from the expectations of society or live separately from the system and structure that's in place. Now,
Wow.
on the opposite side is the North Node, which is where you're being directed to, and this is kind of your true path to follow. And the North Node is again in Leo, and it's also conjunct Regulus in the 12th house. The 12th house is it's very spiritual and esoteric. So this is extremely we're chucking everything in there that's almost out of this world. Like it's the house that's higher consciousness. Not everyone can relate or comprehend to it. It's talking about life after death, other realms and realities, metaphysics, old world technology. It's very higher conscious in this. It's maybe talking about the subconscious mind, predictive programming, like all the ethereal parts of reality, and you're being directed towards bringing that to the public. So, bringing what's hidden to the light, because the 12th house is the abyss. It's ruled by Pisces, which is the abyss is literally like the deepest part of the ocean, if you want to think of it that way. It's the part of the chart that's hidden, and there's also a lot to do with knowledge in there. But then Leo is ruled by the sun. It lights the world. It's everyone can see the sun. It's very clear and obvious. So what your true path is to uncover hidden mysteries and particularly bring it to the public. So put it on show, basically. Now, this can be a little bit daunting because the North Node should feel like it resonates. It should feel like that's something that you've always maybe known and it's familiar that that's what you're supposed to do. But maybe you're maybe it's a bit challenging or it seems a bit scary. However, it should resonate in the fact that you do feel like you naturally have an innate purpose or ability to construct and put together or be able to grasp higher wisdom and knowledge and things that most of the world aren't aware of, but then bring it to the public, make it more mainstream, make it more knowledgeable, and really uncover it in some way. And there will be attention on you for that, usually positive attention, hopefully. But that's because of the conjunction with Regulus, which is the star of like fortune, attention and fame. So realistically, if you are doing this, there should be rather good attention, and you would feel like more or less you are actually walking your true path and higher path. And at the midheaven, which is the highest point, is actually teaching in a structured way. So maybe creating something, whether that's a book or something that is maybe tangible but teaches, and it provides structured knowledge that's using what you teach in a practical way,
Yeah.
ways to set up in life. Now, this doesn't just have to be esoteric knowledge. It could even be something to do with finance because we're talking about money here. It could have to do with a way to bring more freedom into your life. So it could be something to do with how to um, how to break out of the matrix system. It could be something like that, but it's teaching knowledge that can be used practically for people to set up better foundations in their life that maybe sets them apart from what the herd is doing. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, it does make sense. Yeah. That's so
Yeah,
interesting.
so
It's so interesting. Yeah. Thank you for doing that. I mean, yeah, this is amazing. Like, yeah, I don't even know what to say. This is like everything you've said about me is like exactly me, or
yeah.
what I think about. Yeah, it's really bizarre how your chart can be like this, like accurate about yourself. It really is like
Yeah.
a matrix like tool, I guess.
Yes. That's what we're saying. The astrologers know because we sit there with like clients for hours and go through it all and at that point it's just undeniable because if we can read about your downfalls and your strengths and your life on a paper, then it does show that more or less we are living in avatars that do have some kind of programming.
So someone in the chat wants me to ask you. Never mind. Never mind. I was gonna say, it's not a big deal. It's not a big deal.
Okay.
Uh, Let me see here if there's any questions in the chat. Um, no, there's no questions. Well, thank you. Do you want to tell people how they can book a reading or book an astrology session with you? And thank you so much.
Yeah,
This was
absolutely.
awesome.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me on. It's been a pleasure. I do have a website, shereadsthestars.com, and you can see all my information on there. I have a YouTube channel, which is Amélie Gillerat, but you can also find it through my website, and you can navigate through there, be able to book a time. I'm booked out until the new year, but there are availabilities then that you can definitely book in.
Okay. Okay. Well, it was very nice meeting you, and thank
Yeah,
you so much for doing this. And I'd love to have you back on again.
that'd be amazing. Well, thank you, everyone, and thank you, Rob, as well.
All right. Thank you.